Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for taking the time to be with us this morning to learn a little bit about the upcoming tax ratification election. So I want to say welcome to those that are in the room with us and welcome to those that are joining us on a live stream that couldn't make it here this morning. Maybe you're sitting at home or at work and learning a little bit more about the upcoming tax ratification election. I apologize, we're a couple of minutes late. We had some internet issues that we have resolved. And so it doesn't seem quite right to be having this community forum here in the summertime. School hasn't started, but it's right around the corner. So all new staff actually reports on tomorrow. And then on Tuesday, all of our staff comes back in preparation for our students to return on August 20th. Lots of training and planning and preparation underway for the school year. Before I get too far into the presentation, though, I do want to say thank you to Unshakable Grounds, great partner with the district. They're providing the coffee this morning. So if you've not had a chance to ever visit Unshakable Grounds, I would definitely recommend them. And let's get in and talk about the tax ratification election. And to begin that conversation, I really want to talk about first the challenges associated with school finance. So if you've read the paper, watched the news, you've known for several years there's always these headlines that the state is not keeping up its end of providing adequate and efficient equitable funding for education. In fact, Texas ranks 43rd in state spending for education, and Texas school finance system received a D+ from Education Week. One of the challenges specifically about the Texas school finance system is this idea of Robin Hood. So you've probably heard about Robin Hood, us being a Chapter 41 district, us being considered a wealthy district. Well, in Chapter 41, as part of recapture, that's where the state will take money away from wealthy districts and they send it to other districts across the state as part of the plan to equalize the finance of all districts across the state. And so this year, for the first time in the district's history, we've been Chapter 41 for a long time. We're considered property wealthy by the state, but for the first time in the district's history, 2018-19 school year, we're going to be writing a check estimated to be right at $500,000, and that is money that we are going to send to the state of Texas to be redistributed to other school districts across the state. So 18-19, it's $500,000, and 19-20, we're estimating about $2.2 million. The following year, closer to $4 million. The following year, closer to $6 million. And so, again, that is money that we're sending away to other school districts across the state that won't be used here to pay for supplies, teacher salaries. To give you a little bit of perspective, in 19-20, that $2.2 million payment, that would fund 40 teacher salaries in a year. And that, again, is money that we're having to send back to the state to be redistributed to other school districts across the state. And so the Board of Trustees, the administration, we've been having discussions about what can we do to help offset this loss of funding through recapture. And that is why the Board of Trustees approved last month to call a tax ratification election. And so the tax ratification election, also referred to as a TRE, is scheduled for Saturday, August 25th. Early voting is actually going to start here shortly on August 8th. But let's talk about what a tax ratification election is. And to do that, I want to start first with a little bit of School Finance 101. So the tax rate for a school district is made up of two parts. There's the INS rate, interest and sinking tax rate, and it helps to fund things like the bond payments that we make, the debt that the district has today. That's what helps to service that debt. Today, the INS rate in Burnet CISD is 24 cents. The M&O rate is the maintenance and operation tax rate, and that's the part of the tax rate that pays for everything it takes to run the school district. Salaries, utilities, supplies. It's the day-to-day operating fund, and today that tax rate is at $1.04. So if the TRE is approved, the district's tax rate, which today is $1.28 with that M&O and INS combined, it would actually drop to $1.26. And so that would be a 2-cent reduction, and the district would receive an estimated $600,000 in additional operating revenue. And one of the most important pieces of that additional operating revenue is that it is not subject to recapture. So the tax rate would lower by 2 cents. The district would receive an additional $600,000 that would not be subject to recapture. So the state can't touch that money. So the tax ratification election, again, graphically, what would happen is our M&O rate, that's currently $1.04, would increase to $1.06, so it would go up by 2 pennies, but the INS rate would go down by 4 pennies, down to 20 cents. The important thing about these 2 pennies that are increasing, in school finance, they consider them golden pennies. And the reason that they're golden is because of this idea that they're not subject to recapture. Actually, the first 6 cents after $1 are all not subject to recapture. And I think it's an important point to be made that the Board of Trustees, the tax rate for all school districts was compressed back in 2006. And at that time, all school districts basically went to $1.04 on their M&O tax rate. Those 4 pennies of the $1.04 are considered golden. Well, every school district back in 2006 had the opportunity to ask voters to increase their tax rate to $1.06 and gain those 2 extra golden pennies. Our Board of Trustees chose not to access those 2 pennies because we haven't honestly needed those 2 pennies. The Board of Trustees has made the decision that we need those 2 pennies today because we are entering into recapture, and you can see the projection of $500,000 this year, $2.2 million next year, $4 million the following, $6 million the following. And so this idea of the golden penny is extremely important because the Board of Trustees, if they're raising the M&O tax rate, they want to make sure that any money that is generated from that stays in Burnet CISD. By law, we could ask the voters to raise the tax rate to $1.17. Every school district has that ability. And there are school districts out there that have done that. We are not asking that because the challenge is every penny after the $1.06 is going to be subject to recapture. And so we would receive some additional funding, but we would send a lot of funding back to the state, and we are just not wanting to do that. We want to make sure, again, that if we're asking the voters to increase the M&O tax rate, that we are going to be able to keep that money in the district. And the board was especially aware of the fact that we are increasing the M&O rate by the 2 pennies, but we're going to lower the INS rate by 4 pennies, thus lowering the overall tax rate for all voters by 2 pennies. And so just to give you a little bit of perspective, we're currently at $1.28, and this just gives you an idea of where we're at in comparison to other school districts today. And this is before the tax ratification election. So we're at $1.28. To give you an idea, Taylor ISD is $1.57. Liberty Hill ISD is $1.54. Leander, $1.51. Lampasas is $1.43. So even with the passage of the bond in 2014, which since the passage of the bond in 2014, we've been able to lower the tax rate every year after that. We're at $1.28, which is extremely competitive in comparison to other school districts. Again, with the passage of the tax ratification election, our tax rate would decrease to $1.26, and you can see that it would even be more, that much more competitive, being one of the lowest tax rate in the area. In fact, Llano ISD would be the only school district with a lower overall tax rate than Burnet CISD. This is what the ballot is going to look like when people begin voting. There's language about this tax rate rollback election, and then people are going to either choose for or against. Because it's kind of a long paragraph, I wanted to break it up into 4 parts and talk about each part of that ballot. So the first sentence of the ballot says, approving the ad valorem tax rate of $1.26 per $100 valuation in Burnet Consolidated Independent School District for the current year, a rate that is 2 cents higher per $100 valuation than the school district rollback tax rate. And really that just means that if the TRE is approved, like I said earlier, the maintenance and operation rate, the M&O, is going to increase by 2 cents. But as a reminder, the INS rate is going to drop by 4 cents, thus creating an overall reduction in the tax rate by 2 cents. The first subsection of the ballot says decreasing the overall ad valorem tax rate from $1.28 to $1.26. So just what I said, the overall tax rate is going to decrease by 2 pennies from $1.28 to $1.26. And I think it's important to point out that would be the lowest tax rate in decades in Burnet CISD. Subsection 2, decreasing the district's interest and sinking rate by 4 cents. So if approved, again, it's on the ballot that if you approve that, you're decreasing the INS rate by 4 pennies. And then subsection 3 is accessing additional local operating revenue. And so again, as I shared earlier, it just means that if the TRE is approved, the district's going to receive approximately $600,000 in additional funding, and that funding is not subject to recapture. All of that money gets to stay in Burnet CISD. So how are we going to use the $600,000? Well, we're going to continue with the goals and emphasis that we've had in our district. We want to continue to provide pay raises for our staff. The pay raises that we've been able to provide are keeping us competitive in the market, but we know with the cost of everything else happening in our economy that it sometimes doesn't quite keep up with the cost of living when insurance and fuel and all of those other costs are increasing. Safety and security measures. We've already done a lot. The Board of Trustees, as a reminder, here late in the spring, approved for the addition of school resource officers at every one of our campuses. And so we've historically had a school resource officer at the high school and at the middle school. As we begin the 18-19 school year, we'll have a school resource officer at each one of our elementary campuses. But we know that's an additional cost. And so we're spending about $350,000 in order to provide school resource officers at each one of our campuses. And we want to continue to expand and continue the educational programs that we offer in the district. So in review, this chart kind of tells everything that's going to happen if the tax ratification election is approved. So the current M&O rate is $1.04. It will go to $1.06, and that's a 2-cent increase. The INS rate is currently 24 cents. It would go to 20 cents, and that would be a decrease of 4 cents. And the overall tax rate would go from $1.28, drop to $1.26, a 2-penny decrease, and the district, again, is going to receive $600,000 in additional funding that is not subject to recapture by the state. So one of the questions that we've received is, okay, so you're telling us the tax rate is going to be $1.26 in 18-19 if approved. What would it be in 19-20? And we have projected out that in 19-20, the tax rate would remain the same at $1.26. One of the reasons that we're able to do that is we've spent a lot of time forecasting out the next 10 years. The M&O rate that we're increasing by 2 cents, that takes voter approval. The INS rate takes action to make any changes to the INS rate, that takes approval by the board. So we've forecasted out the next 10 years, and what we know is about our INS rate, we will be able to service our debt for 10 years plus and not have to raise the INS tax rate. In fact, what you will most likely see is that we will lower the INS rate in the years to come because as property values increase, we have the capacity to be able to lower the INS rate, and we're going to be retiring the debt from the 2003 bond that helped to build Burnet High School. So that debt actually retires in 2023, and so again, that creates a lot of capacity for us to be able to lower the tax rate even lower than what it is today. The other thing that we have done is we've projected out the next 10 years in looking at our INS rate and looking at future growth. So you see the same thing I see. You watch Liberty Hill, they're booming in growth. Well, we're starting to see a little bit of that occurring in the Bertram area. And so we expect that if we see significant growth in the district, Bertram is going to be the first area that we're going to see growth. And that might mean that we might have to add additional classroom wings or capacity to hold students at Bertram Elementary. So the question that we've received is, well, then, that may have to take a bond to build a new classroom wing. How are you going to afford that? Well, again, the good news is we've projected out the next 10 years, and in the next year, 2 years, we could pass a bond, let's say for $20 million. It would not cost the voters anything in terms of the tax rate. The tax rate would not have to be increased. In fact, we're looking at projections that says we could pass a bond and actually lower the tax rate at the same time. And so, as challenging as becoming a recapture district is, we're really probably in one of the best situations possible in that we have this capacity to maintain or lower our tax rate into the future while still making these recapture payments. The other thing I would say is just kudos to our Board of Trustees. They have done an outstanding job in being fiscally conservative with our budgets and with planning for the future. So not only do we have a very healthy fund balance, and our fund balance is our savings account. We could operate the district for 3+ months just on our savings if we had to, and the district has additional money on top of that 3 months reserve. But as we are planning for the future, what we know is these recapture payments are going to result in deficits the next couple of years. If we project out and we maintain everything as is today, we're projecting deficits out the next 5 years. Well, we're going to be presenting to the board in August when we adopt our budget, a plan in which we're going to put away probably more than $2 million in our savings account to make sure that we have the money available to weather any deficits for the next 5 years. And we're just really proud of the fact that we can plan out that far and make sure that we're putting money away to plan for the future. If you've read the paper or watched the news, you sometimes see districts that are having to make cuts immediately when they become a recapture district. And so our Board of Trustees has done an outstanding job in managing our financial picture. So it's, again, hard to believe. The tax ratification election is almost here in terms of early voting. That begins on August 8th. That week, it's Wednesday through Friday. The next week is Monday through Friday the 13th through the 17th, Monday through Tuesday, the week of the 20th. 8 to 5, the early voting location is here at the Burnet CISD Central Office, right next door to where we're talking right now. And then Election Day is Saturday, August 25th, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and that's going to be at the Burnet County Courthouse, the Bertram Free Library, and Lakeshore Library. Also, we have created a website. So if you go to burnetcisd.net, the first story you'll see is about the TRE. You can be linked to a page in which we provide flyers, postcards, and more than 25 frequently asked questions. So we have some questions that really get into the weeds of school finance. If you're really interested in some of the nitty-gritty of tier funding for school finance, we've got some questions and answers for our voters. And then we've established an email address, tre@burnetcisd.net. If you have questions about the TRE, if you'll send it to that address. If it's a unique question, we'll be adding it to our frequently asked questions, and we'll be personally responding to anyone that writes to us. And then we're also offering that if any group would like for us to come talk to them about the tax ratification election and answer their questions in person, again, they can contact us through tre@burnetcisd.net. I've got Clay Gehring. He is our Director of Business and Finance here with us, and so he's going to join me in answering any questions that you might have. And so with that, I'll open it up to the floor if you have any questions. Yes, sir.
Does the state still have a maintenance of effort requirement, and how does this election affect that?
So question is, for the purposes of the live stream, does the state still have the requirement for maintenance of effort, and how is that going to impact how does the tax ratification election impact that?
Yes, sir. I think so. They do have the maintenance of effort qualifications, and I think they are tied to the effective tax rate. And so a school district, just like any other governmental entity, if the organization raises taxes and that generates more revenue per student than what it was the prior year, then that triggers an election. That is not why this election is occurring. So Burnet CISD's effective tax rate would actually be somewhere near $1.30. So the trigger of this election is the rollback rate, and that's simply because of the property tax rollback from 2006. The state basically said any district that goes above $1.04 will need public approval. So this is not effective rate. We're not having to do the election because we're raising more funds than we had the prior year. Burnet will actually be operating near the exact amount of funds as we had the prior year.
In the past, it was my understanding that maintenance of effort was only related to maintenance and operation tax rates.
That is true. Yep.
And that by increasing that from $1.04 to $1.06, you're resetting your maintenance of effort requirement on the state level, which means you can't go backwards without the state penalizing.
That is exactly right. Yes, sir. Once a district increases a tax rate, then the state kind of sets that as your local effort. And then if you reduce that effort, they don't give you credit for reducing the rate. It just shows that you collected less taxes. So yes, once you go to $1.06, or even now at $1.04, if we decided to go back, the state funding that went with that would be reduced as well. Yes, sir.
On a little bit of a related note, would you take a moment and just talk about school finance from the state level and how, as property values rise in Burnet CISD, what's happening to how much the state is providing in terms of the percentage of funding education in Burnet CISD?
Yes, sir. And it actually is a direct relationship with recapture. So we know everyone's property values are increasing, and that is what directly leads us to paying recapture. So Burnet CISD is not seeing additional revenue from property owners' property value increases. That's rolling back into the state. So there's basically, if you look at it as a cup, and ideally, half of the cup would be filled with local property value, property taxes. The other half would be filled with state funds. That's how the system was designed. And then based on how wealthy you are, that line, half full or half empty, moves up and down. Well, once you get to recapture, that line basically overflows. And instead of the district getting to keep those extra funds, the overflow flows back to the state. And basically the state's effort in funding schools declined, right? So the additional funds we collect go back to the state to take the place of state funds. It goes to another school district, but that school district also is staying with the same amount of funds. It's the states that's seeing the surplus, the extra money that comes from that. That's where the 2 pennies come in. I guess the 2 pennies is an extra cup, right, on the side that you get to keep. So if you start overflowing, we have the golden pennies we get to keep, but then the rest go back to the state at the $1.04. So every dollar, as your property values increase, once you reach our stage, the M&O $1.04, what the current rate is, Burnet CISD sees no increase in local revenue as our values increase today. That all goes back to the state.
Other questions?
Notice on there on the chart, you showed where Liberty Hill was in a higher bracket there.
Mhm.
Okay, and Burnet's in the lower bracket.
Mhm.
However, Liberty Hill is not having to pay out on that recapture fund.
That's right.
So why is that different than what we do here?
Sure. Go ahead.
And that is basically, so Liberty Hill's values are growing, but their student growth is growing. So recapture is based on value per student. And so basically Burnet values are growing, but the student growth is not matching that, hence putting us at a level of $545,000.
Well, actually, we do. So we absolutely. So we've accepted transfers. The 7 years I've been here, and then years before, the district has always accepted transfer students. In fact, it behooves us to accept transfer students today because that the past, especially after the economic downturn, the district saw a decline in enrollment, and so. We not only welcome transfer students, it benefits the district. One of the questions we get is, well, are we always going to be recapture? And as we look out into the future, if you go 10 years from now, 15 years from now, and that growth that's in Liberty Hill begins to spill into Burnet CISD, we conceivably could exit recapture. I've had the question, well, how could we not be recapture next year? It's not likely, but if we added 150 new students in August. That would get us close to probably not being in recapture. That would be extremely helpful. And so having that student growth it benefits the district greatly. And that's why you're seeing Liberty Hill, not only are they growing, their property values are increasing, but they're also adding kids at the same time, because their property values are increasing primarily because they're adding new homes that are being populated with young families that have students. So, other questions? Yes, ma'am.
What kind of new educational programming are y'all talking about adding? And who will benefit from that?
So we're always having conversations about what programs we want to add. An example that we're expanding this next year is our aerospace engineering program. As part of our Project Lead the Way pre-engineering, we're continuing a second year of Mandarin Chinese. And so that is, we're not only offering Mandarin Chinese 1, but we're offering Mandarin Chinese 2. This last year, we just added construction and geometry, in which it's a double block class. Students are learning geometrical concepts, getting the geometry credit, while also building a tiny home and using those geometrical concepts in real life applications. The home is completed. It is up at the high school. We're going to actually be selling it here as we enter into the fall semester, but it takes money to seed that next home. And so we constantly have in our vision for the future, not only what does the workforce say that our kids skills that our kids need to have, but also what are the interests of our students. And so I can tell you that we have more ideas and dreams than what we have funding today to pay for those things. An area that we are doing really well in is our career and technical education programs, but we want to add more technical and education programs for our kids. We're very focused on what we call creating an educational buffet for our students. We want our kids to show up and be able to do whatever they want to do at Burnet CISD. As we enter the next 5 years, though, I've shared with the board, we may have to face some difficult decisions. We're putting money away to try and weather the deficits that we're projecting into the future. But a district our size, it becomes more and more difficult to offer all of these programs, because the more programs you offer, that means that fewer students might be in that program. For example, there aren't 100 students in Chinese because we can't afford to have 100 students in our Mandarin Chinese. But then it becomes very expensive to only have 25 students taking Mandarin Chinese 1. And so we're having to constantly evaluate our educational offerings. But we want to make sure that we're meeting workforce demands, college-ready demands, and what our students are telling us they want to be involved in. Any other questions? Uh-huh.
And the schools are growing, but yet Burton has done this much, and you still got taxes coming in, and you're not showing people in Burton that their taxes.
So the question was, what are we doing about Bertram Elementary? And the one piece I'll disagree with you is, in the 2014 bond, every campus was addressed. So Bertram Elementary received upgrades in terms of secure entryways, new roof, new fire alarm system. The classic building was completely renovated. All buildings have been painted, new ceiling tiles, new carpet, new security fencing, security cameras. So there's been a lot of upgrades happening at Bertram Elementary. In thinking about the future, one of the realities, as I shared, is that we believe that Bertram Elementary will be one of the first places that will experience growth, and it doesn't have a lot of capacity for future growth. It can handle some more students, but if we see growth like Liberty Hill is seeing, we would not be able to manage that growth. And so We've already walked that property with architects, talked about where maybe a future classroom wing would happen. And so we're having discussions in the background, planning for the future, knowing that if we actually did have to build a classroom wing at Bertram Elementary, that would require a future bond proposal, because we don't have that kind of money, as you can see in our maintenance and operation, to be able to build classroom wings. Any other questions?
One thing I'd like to add, going back to the question about what educational programs are being added, is at the elementary level, there aren't quite the exciting programs that we can offer at the high school level. But one challenge is classroom sizes, how many students are in a class, and that requires efficient budgeting to be able to react and respond if growth in certain grade levels hits, to be able to respond and add teachers. This past fall, we were able to add teachers when first, second grade levels became too full. That also helps kind of address that open enrollment, transfer students, allowing them to come in and not having to be as concerned. We still have to keep an eye on it, but as concerned with, oh, we'll have to add a teacher at the elementary level. So that's another, keeping grades, class sizes efficient is another part of kind of educational programs we want to continue to serve.
So I'll just wrap up by saying thank you so much for taking the time to be here. If you're watching us on the live stream event, want to remind you that you can go to tre@burnetcisd.net and ask us any questions that maybe you have that you didn't get a chance to have answered. So thanks so much for being here, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.